These two iPads, despite the fact that they're different colors, look very similar, and they are in terms of their fit and finish and displays. This is the 7th gen on your left and the 8th gen on your right. This is newly released just this past Tuesday, and the main difference between these two tablets is the hardware on the inside. The 7th gen has the 4-year-old now A10 Fusion that launched with the iPhone 7 in 2016, whereas the iPad 8th gen has the A12 Bionic, which launched with iPhone XS in 2018. And today we're going to see just how much of a difference this newer processor makes in everyday tasks and some heavier end ones as well. But before we continue here, I'd appreciate it if you'd leave a like, comment, and of course, click the bell icon if you haven't already. Alright, so we got the 7th gen on the left here and the 8th gen on the right. Once again, A10 Fusion, A12 Bionic, 2-year gap in performance, so we'll see how things go here. First up, let's test out Touch ID. So I'm going to unlock with both at the same time, 3, 2, 1. And as you can see, it was quicker with the iPad 8th gen. Let's try that again real quick here. I'm going to turn both off. I think they have the same generation of Touch ID. Maybe I'm wrong, but as you can see here, a little bit quicker on the 8th gen. Maybe a little bit less of a gap there with that second test, but as you can see, unlocking is a bit quicker. Next up, let's test out just the UI and the animations. We'll pull up, like Control Center. We'll do, how about the notification panel. We can also do just the app switcher, although we have no apps open. We can go through this. One thing I am noticing is that with the A10, this is kind of smooth, sort of choppy here and there, but with the A12, it's just much smoother. And even though these panels are the same in terms of color and refresh rate, yeah, I mean, this just feels smoother. This the GPU that is within the A12 is coming in clutch here, not even in like a heavier end task, so you can see how it does make a difference in that regard. Next up, let's compare app opening speed here. I want to start off with the App Store because for some reason this gives older gen iPads some trouble, so we'll test this out here. And as you can see, it opens up first on the 8th gen, just a tad bit quicker than the 7th gen. Let's close this up here. Let's open up Spotify. This is an app that I use quite frequently. And as you can see, just a bit quicker on the 8th gen. Once again, this is reflective of these, processors. Of course, we're going to see that this tablet is a bit faster, but the question is how much faster, and that's what I want to demonstrate here. Let's also open up YouTube, another media app. So we'll do that, and this is sort of a same vibe, just a little bit quicker on the 8th gen, a little bit slower on the 7th gen here, by like a second or two. Not the biggest deal, but still, it does make a difference after hours and hours of use. Next up, let's open up Safari. We'll load a web page, and we can do some web surfing as well. So as you can see here, just a bit quicker in terms of web loading speeds with the A12, a little bit slower with the A10. How about we load the Apple website here? That's sort of a rich site, so I can type that in. As you can see, typing is very smooth on both these devices regardless of the hardware gap. I'll click go, and that was pretty much the same loading that site here. I have very good internet. I have fiber internet in this apartment, thank God, so that's nice. But yeah, web surfing seems to be a pretty equivalent experience here, very smooth on both. How about we do some multitasking next? That's always good. How about we open up, I don't know, files. We'll drag that over here towards the right. And that was smooth on both. A little bit of a lag here with the A10. So you can see where the A12 does pull ahead just a little bit here. Let's go back and maybe open something up. I don't know. Let's maybe open up documents or some sort of folder here. Let me see. We'll go on my iPad, maybe LumaFusion. So I don't really have too much going on here, but yeah. Let's do some resizing of the windows here. I think both of these experiences are smooth, but the animations, to me at least in person, feel smoother with the A12. And once again, I think that's because the GPU within this tablet is twice as good as the one found in this one. But enough with opening apps and multitasking. Now let's talk about the Apple Pencil experience with both of these tablets here. I'll launch Notes so we can sort of, start writing here. I'll go full screen. And I now have two Apple Pencils, which is going to make testing two iPads, at least lower end iPads, simultaneously much, much easier. So that's nice here. So how about we open up the pencil tool here and we'll do some shading. I always enjoy doing that. It's very satisfying. So we'll do that, and the color is blue on both. So we have the same thickness here, and we can just go ahead and do that. And I am not really noticing a difference. Maybe my brain is trying to tell me that the A12 is just smoother, but that might be sort of a placebo effect, if you know what I mean. Because if you think something is better, maybe you perceive something is better. But to me, I mean, like, these experiences are equally smooth. Maybe, like, I don't know. You know what? No, they're equally smooth. I'm not noticing any difference in, like latency. Part of me, once again, thinks that the A12 might offer a bit of a smoother experience, once again, because of that GPU. But if there is a difference, it's like a 5% difference, something very minuscule. So writing and drawing, as you can imagine, isn't going to be much different on either of these tablets. And you don't necessarily need an A12 to do that very, very nicely here. But we'll see some tasks coming up where a higher and beefier GPU really is necessary. But as you can see here, very smooth experience with both. I'm having a great time here. Once again, maybe a tiny bit smoother with the 8th gen, but it's really nothing an average consumer, and I don't mean that in a negative connotation, like an everyday person could, discern with their naked eye. One more thing I want to do with Pencil though is test out my favorite iPadOS feature, Scribble, and I'm probably going to do a dedicated video on this going into how you can use it just in like my workflow or any workflow for that matter. But I want to test out this feature and see if there's any latency difference in terms of, recognizing handwriting as, text. So let me write hello, for example, right here. That's super quick. I can do the same thing here. And it's the same sort of latency, although it didn't get that right because my handwriting is so bad right now. But yeah, it's equally quick in recognizing handwritten text. So that is good to see here. Once again, as I've said, Apple is just great with optimization, even with 4-year-old chips here. And that just goes to show, even if you bought a 7th gen like last week or like whenever, like recently, you shouldn't fret too much, especially if you are doing, more like everyday tasks like note taking and web surfing here. This is still holding up quite well. Next up, I want to do some photo editing, and my app of choice is Lightroom, naturally. And I have some photos that I took recently with a friend at my college, and I want to just sort of go through and make some adjustments here and see if there's any difference in terms of the performance. So I do not need a tutorial, so I'm going to maybe up the exposure on both here. Once again, I'm not noticing any difference in terms of latency and the adjustments. Like, there really is no difference. It seems like this is a very single core oriented task. And as I will show later in this video, single core scores, although they are different, they are more similar than the multi-core scores, which is an important thing to note, by the way. So keep that in mind, especially when I show you some heavier tasks with these tablets here. Let's do some, I don't know, let's add some like sharpness maybe or detail. So I'll go to, clarity. So effects, how would we do some texture maybe? I'll add like there, I'll do that. Maybe we can do some sharpening. And like, yeah, for stuff like this, you really don't need a better processor to have a good time. Like, as you can see here, I'm showing like before and after. You know what, I'll do a more dramatic adjustment so you can see sort of the before and after view. How about I don't know, like make it like a little bit more exposed, actually less exposed, because that looks at least better than overexposed. So let me just sort of toggle back and forth for my edit here. As you can see, oh, you know what? Let's just see here. Let me see if there might be just a ever so slight delay with the A10 here in previewing what you had before, like before you edited. So there you go. Actually, there is a difference with multi-core scores. I think I may have misspoke a little bit. There is a difference in multi-core scores by like 300 points here. This is actually a good time to bring this up. I will open up Geekbench here. I ran a test earlier today. So with the iPad 7th gen, you have a single core score of 771, and with the 8th gen, you have a single core score of 1116. So it's a substantial difference. Obviously not like out of the ballpark, like for right here, like multi-core scores with the 7th gen are 1420, with the 8th gen 2671. So a huge difference, almost double the performance there. So it's a less of a jump here, but you can see that once again in Lightroom, as we just saw. Maybe I'm wrong. I think I'm seeing this when you are previewing certain things, right? It's just a little bit slower, just a tiny bit slower with the A10. And that's fine. I mean, it makes sense. It's older hardware, but still, that's something to keep in mind. And this is, I guess, a demonstration of just the slight edge the 8th gen has in single core tasks, just like with opening apps and other stuff like that. But anyway, let's move on to a heavier task now. I'm going to open up LumaFusion, which is one of my favorite apps on the App Store for iPad, by the way. If I was less of a Final Cut user, I would absolutely use this. So let's open this up here and drop in a 4K clip. It's funny, I've noticed it opens a little bit quicker on the 7th gen for some reason. That's super weird, but it opens pretty comparably. But once again, just a second quicker on the 7th gen. That's interesting. So let me open up all photos and videos here, and I'm going to select this 1 minute and 7 second 4K clip, and I'm going to drag it onto here. And how about we play this back here and see if there's any difference in latency or anything. So they're both playing back at the same time, which is a good sign, I will say. So here is scrubbing 4K video. I would say the experience is pretty close. I don't want to make the call. Maybe you can, as an objective outside viewer. So you let me know which you think is, scrubbing more easily. Perhaps it's the A12 or perhaps they're both very comparable. So I don't really want to make that call once again, but how about we add an effect here? I'm going to double tap on this clip. So I'm gonna add a little filter here, whatever, a little color adjustment. So I'll add the contrast one, and then we can play that back here. And very impressively, both of these, despite the hardware difference, are playing these back simultaneously, just as smoothly. So that's really cool. And by the way, this is once again 4K video, so the A10 is still holding its own here. But I guess a real test is to see how export times differ here. So I'm gonna click export. We're gonna do movie. We're gonna go export this to the photo library. We'll also do H.264, same size, same resolution. Let's see which one finishes first. So go. And surprisingly enough, the A10 really is holding its own with this app. Very surprised here. While the A12 is objectively better, like it has a better GPU, better performance here, it appears that for this individual clip, the A10 is really just enough to get this out timely, in a timely manner. So as you can see here, that's funny, it actually got it out a little bit sooner. Maybe that's an issue with optimization. Maybe LumaFusion has to be further optimized for this individual iPad. But regardless, that just shows you how good Apple Silicon is even 4 years later. So for a 1-minute 4K clip, it appears that performance is more comparable. But, obviously, if you look at the Geekbench scores, which are reflective of single core and multi-core oriented tasks, this is obviously better, even with its GPU. And I'll actually show you another thing that I ran, A12 Benchmark. This really shows you what's going on here with the scores. So let me just orient these this way. They'll probably be cut off a little bit, maybe, I don't know. But if you look here, this got a score of 252,946. This iPad got a score of 455,270. So obviously something big is under the hood here, something bigger and badder and better. And if we look at the test broken down into its individual components, CPU is up by a few thousand, up by like 40,000 actually, so that's crazy. GPU is up by almost 100,000, so that is also insane. So you'll see better gaming performance, as I'll show in a minute here. Better memory performance, although I will say this tablet has the same memory, and a better UX performance, which sort of measures, I think, like the way UI is smooth or whatever, like image processing and user experience. So yeah, definitely a better chip, but that's really interesting to see how LumaFusion by itself works here. So I guess I'll do more testing with that in the future, but of course it's valuable to show you that, especially if you're doing LumaFusion work with your 7th gen. So, you might not have to feel so bad at this moment if you just recently bought this tablet. And finally, let's do some gaming here. I'm gonna open up Minecraft and we can see which app opens first here, and then we'll create a creative world to test out the performance. So a little bit quicker on the 8th gen to no one's surprise. We'll also click play, and then I'm going to create a new creative world. Continue. I'm gonna press create. Then proceed. And here we are with a new generated world here. And let's fly around real quick. Very smooth performance with the 7th gen here. What's interesting, and I've seen this before, even with my iPad Pros, with one of them has like choppier frames. And this is really interesting that maybe there's like a setting that I have turned on here, or maybe like, I don't know, like this iPad isn't quite optimized for this app yet. Maybe it hasn't like recognized the A12. I don't know. It's very interesting. I don't doubt that this tablet is powerful, obviously, as we saw with these benchmarks that we ran. But yeah, it's pretty interesting here to see that the frames are a little bit inconsistent at the present moment. Not to say this is going to be a poor tablet for gaming in the future, but for right this second in September, I don't know. kind of interesting that the frames are a little bit inconsistent. So maybe there's, once again, some optimization that needs to be done on the developer's end or Apple's end. I have no idea, but it's good to take note of this, despite the fact that, you know, the A12 is objectively better than the A10. So that's very interesting to note, I would say here. And with that said, let's test out another game. We'll open up Call of Duty Mobile, a very popular game as of right now, especially on iPad. One of my favorite mobile games. We'll open up the experience here. I can only game on one at a time, so we'll see which one. So I'm going to start off with the 7th gen here and just enter as a guest. So very smooth performance, as you can see here. I talked about this a couple months ago. Some drop frames here and there, especially with like multiple. So like, yeah, some choppy frames here. But like I said, for the most part, a very playable and enjoyable experience. I've actually spent like minutes, like multiple minutes, like during review, like when I'm filming stuff, because I would get lost into the game. So that goes to show, once again, still how this is a great performing iPad with its older hardware here. So having done that, now let me try this game on this iPad. When I'm running around, it feels just a little bit smoother, just like the UI did. There's just a bit more of a snappiness with the, you know, the A12's GPU, and it makes sense. It's you know, technically twice as good. So that is showing its true colors here. But like with any mobile app, it's not going to be perfectly optimized and totally bug-free and, you know, deliciously smooth every 5 seconds. So, but yeah, I am noticing a bit more snappiness, a bit more smoothness with this GPU here with the 8th gen for sure. So gaming is going to be a better experience here, I would say. You can crank up the settings more, you can enjoy more frames, and it's getting even smoother. I feel like getting more into the game or playing it for a minute here has made it smoother. Maybe like RAM had to get filled with information, I don't know, maybe like when you first open the game it's a bit more choppy, but yeah, this is definitely smoother, definitely more of a playable, enjoyable experience. And so yeah, if I were you, I'd recommend going for an A12 equipped iPad if you are into gaming, because once again, just like benchmarks suggested, the GPU is almost twice as fast, if not twice as fast in many situations.
And that about wraps things up here. I hope this video was helpful. The iPad 8th gen is definitely impressive with this new spec bump. I'd highly recommend considering it as your next or first iPad. And I gotta say, even with this upgrade, the 7th gen is still pretty impressive. I wouldn't necessarily recommend buying it, but if you just bought it, I wouldn't be too broken up about the 8th gen because it's still a high-performing device. The A10 Fusion still holds its own in 2020 with iPadOS 14. So yeah, Apple Silicon is just very impressive as it is. Apple really does have software and hardware optimization down pat. I'd really appreciate it once again if you leave a like, comment, of course, if you have any questions, suggestions, or opinions, and subscribe for more content like this. And as always, I'm Noah, and I will catch you all in the next one.